Yeah, I remember, Bonnie, the first day I met you. I was here in the building. I was in the building a lot back in days past, trying to help keep it together. And it's looking great. You guys are doing a great job here. So as Bonnie mentioned and others have mentioned, the theme for this month is My Good Flows Through Me. And the title of my talk today is My God Flows Through Me. Good and God to me have sort of an equals sign in between them. I'm not sure if that's how it works for you, but that's how it works for me. And as I'm fond of saying, I'm up here to talk about what I want to talk about, what I need to hear from me through God, through me, as me. And as Doug was mentioning in his last words of his reading, for me, through me, right? So I believe that there's been several elements of how good flows through us that have been talked about. Bonnie, I felt like from Bonnie's talk, it was really the point that I got strong and hard was seek ye first the kingdom, and all else will be added unto it. And then Doug and Tina, who were my teachers of prosperity, thank you God, and thank you for you, brought my world into an entire different perspective when I took classes with Doug and Tina in prosperity, and we did some of the things that they talked about. We did the Unexpected Income Club. We did things like the John Randolph Price little book of daily whatever. We kept the gratitude journals like Randy talked about in his talk. And all of these tools and tips, I think, are immensely helpful if you're finding challenges around feeling as beautiful as you are and having the ability to show the love that's in you in your heart because you're not finding it there for yourself or for others. And these are just mechanical ways. We have a practical spiritualism in Science of Mind, what we are fond of calling it, because we teach practical tools and methodologies and techniques like affirmative, alternative prayer. Those are all spiritual tools that we have in our toolkit to help us get to the next level of consciousness. And hopefully, as we move into our level of consciousness, as Bonnie's comments this morning in the initiation of the new member, that everyone from that person outward benefits, just like the friend that's here to see what's this all about. You know, do I want what you have, kind of a thing. That's the power of attraction, and that's really what I think you come down to talking about when it comes to talking about the idea of prosperity and good, and where does my good come from, and how are we conceiving of and perceiving of what is our good. It's all good because it's all God. That's just my sense of how it works, and that's how it works for me, is to say no matter what's going on, no matter what the appearance is, no matter how I might be feeling today or what in the world is going on around me in the news, and in Michael Beckwith's calling of the news, that's the headlines are the world's prayer request, whatever is going on out there, that doesn't have to have any impact on the essence of who I am at the God level, which is God incarnate. So my God flows through me because my God is me, because I am God. And God is me and you, all of us. God is everywhere, as you read at the end of the reading for the new membership, that it's all God, and God is everywhere and in everything, and it's all God. So it's all flowing through me, through you, through all of us, through everyone out there. Anything that we see, as the song that you sing at the end that Mary Lynn wrote, is a part of me. You know, everything that I'm going to meet in my world is a part of me, and I'm a part of it. Joel Goldsmith is fond of talking about this idea of oneness. This is oneness with spirit and oneness with the other, but there is no other, because he said if there were the other, there'd be two-ness instead of oneness. And I kind of like that idea, that term. So who are we, and how do we get to this God is me sort of radical concept that you might think of if you come from, you know, whatever your starter religion was? Probably didn't teach it that way. Didn't teach that you were God. The idea that maybe God is you and you are God was maybe even blasphemous. But I want to start out today by talking a little bit about what Ernest Holmes has to say, our founder has to say about what he calls the divine urge. This book was given to me by Reverend Sandy in her giveaway of her plans to kind of reduce her belongings, her good, and share it with others. And it's called Questions and Answers on the Science of Mind by Ernest Holmes and someone named Smith, whom I do not know, that helped him write it. But the question that's raised here in this Q&A, this is the FAQ of Science of Mind, right? The Q&A here is, the question is, how can I let the Spirit work through me? How can I discriminate between the divine urge and my human impulse? And I don't know about you all, but this is always sort of a challenge for me. Is, okay, I'm meditating, I'm getting this hit. Is this intuitive hit something that I'm getting because it's Spirit, it's coming through me? Or is it my personality, my humanness, my desire, my want at the human level? And how do I figure out which is what and who's on first and what's on second? So the answer that Ernest gives is this. The first thing for you to do is to recognize your unity with the great universal expression. Just another, we have so many different words for this idea of Spirit. If you can get a clear concept of your oneness, not two-ness, your oneness with it, you will be able to differentiate between the human impulse and the divine urge. In the former, you see that only smaller self is going to benefit if your wish or desire is fulfilled. While in the latter, you're going to discover that what benefits you will be beneficial to all. Show the love that's in your heart to all. Although the universal urge works through the individual, it never loses sight of its own cosmic purposes. Therefore, you may ask yourself whether only selfish ends are served by the fulfillment of the desire within you. And if you find this to be the case, you may be sure that your human impulse is father to that desire. So the divine urge is altruistic. Show the love that's in your heart to everyone. Serving the many through its least expression, the smile on the platform at the frustrated people that Mary Lynn's song was about. And let the Spirit work through you. It is necessary that you find in yourself a secret place within your soul where you realize that your identity as an individual is simply the working of the great self-knowing mind. And from this inner sanctuary, you may analyze your impulse, whether it be the petty personal or the great impersonal. So this reading here is the core of what I want to visit with you all about today. I want to talk about the impersonal life and this concept of altruism, and how my little cliche for it is doing good to do well. If we want our good to come to us, we can say that we're doing well. We have well-being, we have happiness, and we're at some level of physical benefits, that we're not struggling to put food on the table or clothes on our back or gas in the car or whatever any of those things are. To me, that's all about what is wellness. Spiritual, physical, emotional, all of it is wellness. So we do good to do well because we're bringing through us, for us, what we're putting out for others. We have learned in this philosophy, I think most of you who've been here for a while, except maybe Julie, that what we have a desire for, that we want to come to us, we first have to do what? We have to put it out. We have to give it out. So if you want more love, give more love. If you want more money, give more money. Now these things sound a little bit similar the way I said them, but I'll bet you had a little different emotional reaction to the second line. I didn't think I was in the wrong room here. Yeah, but we are a little more difficult to get over these concepts when it comes to this idea of circulation, and the circulation of my good and your good and all of our good that's all wrapped up there together, that has to do with this symbolic essence of good that we call money. I was going through, Kathy's here today, Kathy Lady, I will eventually get some books over here that I promised her for months back. Anyway, I've been going through another couple of boxes of books in the last couple of days, and there was one in there that I had never, ever cracked the spine on. And I thought, oh, I'll just put it in the pile for the church. And then I thought, I'm just going to do that very highly scientific science of mind concept, and I'm just going to let the book plop and see if it will. Well, it had never been cracked, so it was a little bit, difficult, but it did. It finally just sort of like opened. So I'm reading, so I thought, okay, I've got to read this. Now listen to this. The Courage to Change is the title of the chapter. All right. Then I get to the end of it. Mostly what he's talking about is coaching and how to become a coach and how to help other people change their lives, how coaching changes lives. And he's telling a story about his first coach was his sponsor in a 12-step program. And that's where he began to understand, a lot of the ideas that shifted and changed his world. And he's written in here this thing that they read at the beginning of 12-step meetings in many places. It's called the promises. And then the last paragraph, he said, these promises have been kept in my life. And one of those promises is, that we will no longer have fear of financial insecurity. So I want to mention that. But he says down here, he says, my coach coached a guy who was so much in debt that his life looked hopeless and his business was doomed. And after a year and a half with my coach, this is the sponsor, he was debt-free and one of the wealthiest people in our town. And that's just about money, he said. But I use money as an analogy for breakthrough in consciousness. And this was an interesting concept. That's why I wanted to share it to you. I bring things, whatever shows up in my world the week before I speak, pretty much what you're going to hear about. Because I trust that spirit saying, okay, bring this to their attention. I'm just here to serve. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, well, you see me about it afterwards. So he said, I only use breakthroughs in money as examples because they're easy to quantify, easy to measure. He says real breakthroughs occur in many, many better ways than just money. And that got me to thinking about how, I think it was Tina talking about, in her talk about the sort of beginning prosperity consciousness in the science of mind teachings, where you kind of work on the parking places, the princes, and the palaces. And I realized, that is partly how we help people to quantify this stuff works. Because there's this physical manifestation at the baby step level that shows, okay, if I can give love to get love coming back through me, maybe I could give money to have money coming back through me. So these are just the experiments in my life as the laboratory is another one of my teachings, and certainly I learned it here, so it's one of our teachings. But, excuse me. So to me, we're here to talk about altruism of service of love, as well as altruism of service of your good, and your goods with an S on the end, right? So we're giving it away to keep it, and doing good to do well. So this God that flows through me, well, who is this me? Who is this me? Is it just this, physical persona? We're taught in Science of Mind, and I've been told that it's not about being just the personality. I got one of those for sure. But it's not my personality or my individualized expression of spirit that's causing my good to flow through me. No, it's my incarnation of that expression of the, what did he call it here? The great universal expression. It's my individualization of the great universal expression that is, my nose is starting to run here. Sorry, I got the difficulties here. So my good is flowing through me, in, around, for me, as Doug read for us today, that God can only do for us what God will do through us. Yeah. So this is the concept that over and over and over again I have to remind myself of, that it's not me that doeth the work. It is the Father within that doeth the work. And how do I let this Spirit work through me, as Ernest is talking about in the book? How can I get connected to that God mind? Well, as I said, I wanted to talk about this concept of the impersonal life that Ernest mentions here, that it's not personal. And you can't see it because these are still old print books, but he has the word impersonal capitalized here. So when I read to you that he says, from this inner sanctuary, you can analyze yourself, and whether it be petty, personal, or the great impersonal, the capital I. So this impersonal life is the challenge in my life. I don't know how it will work for you all, but I take things personally rather than impersonally. A lot of the times, and this is one of Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements: don't take anything personally. But we do, whether it's good or bad. I mean, we take the Supreme Court ruling personally. We take the murders in Charlottesville, personally. We take those things in through our filter that is our individualized personality that personalizes everything, unless we get more conscious about it, unless we get more intentional around how we see things. So one of the things that came my way week before last, which was when I was starting to work on, I knew I wanted to talk about my God flows through me, and that I wanted to see this as, it's not me, the personality, it's not me, Peggy, it's not me. It is God as me, for me, through me, around me. And any of you all are on the emailing list for the Hay House? Yes. Yeah, so I got something from Wayne Dyer through the Hay House. And I went to look at the video, because I like Wayne. He's one of us, in my opinion. He definitely is one of us. He was a student of Louise Hay's, who is a Science of Mind practitioner. But I went to watch the video. And as my charm life works, here he brings to me this book called The Impersonal Life. He talked about how someone had sent it to him anonymously. He gets lots and lots and lots of things that people, they shower him with love all the time, from your song last week, Mary Lynn, that brings all sorts of things to him. And he says most of the things, he never looks at them really, and he passes them on and gives them away and what have you. But this little book came, and he said, I felt the calling. I felt the calling to open this book and read it. So I felt the calling to listen to Wayne about it. And I was able to find it. It's available online, and it's free. And if anybody wants to, they can look it up and Google it, or you can talk to me afterwards. Give me your email. I'll send you the exact link to the one that I downloaded. But I brought a number of quotes from that book today to kind of read to you. And so I apologize for reading, but I don't have the memory I once had to memorize all these things. I watch Bonnie say these things that I know that she's memorized these quotes and stuff. No, you're reading them? You have some little cheat card in your hand that I don't see? Oh, okay. It's outside the video screen. Clever cropping, Randy, clever cropping. Anyway, so there's a chapter, and it's called I, life, God. And to me, it's like equals. I equal life equal God in this chapter. And this quote is, I am the innermost, the spirit animating cause of your being, of all life, of all living things, both visible and invisible. Nothing can be without manifesting and expressing some phase of me, capital M, who am not only the builder of all forms, but the dweller in each form. Now, this book was written in 1914 by a person who was anonymous at that point in time when it was published, according to Wayne. And I haven't really done a lot of research about the book itself, but I believe that Wayne's done his fact-checking. That in 1940, when the man who wrote it passed away, is when his wife came forward and divulged that he was the author of this book called The Impersonal Life. And he had, according to Wayne, written it, put it out there, and not wanting to have it associated with him. He was a Lutheran minister. And when you read the book, I mean, it's like Ernest Holmes wrote it. It's amazingly like our concept of God, and not what but it opens my eyes to my prejudice against my thinking. Probably get it from Prairie Home Companion, because there weren't any Lutherans where I grew up. So I probably get it from Prairie Home Companion that Lutherans are kind of stodgy folk, but But maybe not. So my apologies if that was your starter religion, too. Anyway, he says this so-called individuality is personality seeking to maintain itself in a separate existence. I am you, the real self of you, and that you really are. The real you is immortal, a divine self. The impersonality. So that's in the beginning part of the book. This was channeled like A Course in Miracles through this man, and that was another reason why he didn't really want to be associated with it. Kind of like the people in Course in Miracles who were atheists. They didn't want to be associated with something that talked like Jesus was talking to them or whatever. And then he says that who is this you who directs and controls the activities of your organs and each of your cells? So something there's some divine, there's some greater intelligence, there's some power greater than ourselves that's out there. And in Wayne's video, he used this analogy of hold out your hands and look at your fingernails. And he said, so you can do that if you want to with me. And he says, now, if you think you're in control of everything, you just decide, well, I'm tired of clipping you guys and filing them and cutting them and cleaning them, and I just want you to stop growing. So go home tonight and tell your fingernails you're done. See how that works. So, or breathing, We don't breathe ourselves. We talk in meditation about trying to focus on breathing, but we're not the one really that's doing all that breathing, that autonomic systems in our body. And that's a good thing. Because I'd probably say, oh my gosh, I got busy, I forgot to breathe. And that is true for me a lot of times. I'm holding my breath. I find myself holding my breath. But this idea of altruism, that is doing well through doing good. Meditation is one of the things that, I've forgotten now who it was, I think it was Randy that talked about a number of scientific studies about the concepts that we have, which was one of the ones that Bonnie read. Meditation, alternative affirmative prayer, all these things. So meditation is the thing that I think is being shown up, and I bought this book that I was showing to Larry earlier, but someone else a week before last turned me on to this guy he's a monk, named Matthew Ricard. He's French. And when I watched the YouTube video of him, I don't know if this first I'd heard of him, you guys might have heard of him before, but I realized when he was talking that he'd been involved in these studies of the Dalai Lama on neurological plasticity and neuroscience to see whether in reality the Buddhist concepts of meditation included in those were being proved up by science or being disproved by science. So if you're wanting to look at any of those things, I'd be happy to turn you on to that as well. But primarily, he talked about at Google. The video I watched was him making a presentation at Google in California. He was a guest there, and his robes and the whole thing. And he's written books with the Dalai Lama and with Daniel Goleman that wrote the Emotional Intelligence book. So he's co-authored a number of books. But he does apparently live in some hermitage up in the Himalayas. And he was a molecular biologist, had a PhD in molecular biology. And when he finished his PhD, he went off on some soul-seeking journey. And he ended up there in the Himalayas with a lot of contemplatives who had been there for many, many years. And he says, I want what they have. I want that. And he stayed, never left. He's been there 30 years in the order that he's in. But he was presenting the results of a lot of these studies at the thing in Google about happiness. He wrote a book about happiness, and that the concept of happiness from his perspective comes from altruism. And he's showing in the sense of when they contemplate, when they put the people who are the long-time contemplatives into the fMRIs and these resonant imaging machines, and they hook up all these electrodes onto their heads to see where their brain's firing. All of these things that they're coming out with in their scientific studies. And then they have the other people in this biotech company in Madison that were involved in the experiment. They took new people and they divided them into two groups, people who had not meditated before. And they had one group learning the meditation and contemplating on the focus of loving kindness or compassion. And then the other group, they just had them show up every day and sit around, promising that they, at the end of the first part of the experiment, then they would get taught how to do the meditation. but those are the groups that they compared. So they had the baseline of the high level of contemplatives who maybe have got 10,000 hours time on task, which is what they say is the mastery level, right? And then they looked at these groups that were novices and saw the difference between the ones who were learning to meditate and not. And so the conclusions they've drawn is essentially you've got all these things firing in your brain that are positive when you've been meditating. And the ones who sat around actually probably got a little more agitated in the process because they were sitting around doing nothing. And so it worked even worse for them to study things. So that it depresses the fear and anger and the amygdala, I mean, lots of things. So there's benefit to meditation that can bring you through to the other side. And this is what Ernest is talking about in this part of the book that I want to read to you as I close it up here, when he talks about what you meditate on. So in the studies that the monks were doing for the Dalai Lama, it was primarily to focus on their Buddhist concept of compassion and that it's all loving kindness, which is share the love in your heart and altruistically offer it without attachment to outcome, without intention or attachment that it's going to bring you any good, but knowing that it might. So the question here is about expressing the real self and getting to the God mind. And he suggests that in your daily treatment, you set up this treatment and then you go into your daily meditation. And the treatment is divine intelligence within me and within the point under my consideration. I recognize your presence. And I know you now reveal to me the avenue through which I might find my perfect expression. Within this word is each agency that is necessary to its fulfillment, and I know that for the sake of the self within me, the capital S self within me, that's the God self within me, that's the God flows through me, my God flows through me. I'm now answered and satisfied, and I expect and receive my answer. I am protected against making any mistakes. Then he says, meditate daily on this activity that you have chosen, using your treatment as a given, and without doubt you will find new avenues opening to you. This is for your good to flow through you, to you, as you, around you. And then he says, fearlessly follow your hunches in connection with your meditation. Leave nothing undone. So I say, go do it. Get these tools, get the ideas, make your life the laboratory. Practice the techniques, practice the thoughts until they become beliefs. And your God is flowing through you always, whether you know it or not. Namaste.